new songs.
Are they getting tired of the old ones?
I don't know, but I mean, I guess for $500,000, you can get some scientists to program your bird or birds in general to sing new songs.
Seems like an awful expensive record. Jeez.
I have no idea. And
Did they say how they do that? I'm going to be serious now for a change.
I don't. It doesn't say that. I'm just reading.
They didn't say exactly how they actually got the songs in the birds' minds in the first place, or
no. I'm just reading the little blurps here. In the crazy, wacky news world.
I can believe it. I mean, from a scientific standpoint, they're tapping into the electric impulses that come from the brain and everything. They probably mapped out some things where they can implant those kind of responses, cause a bird to... They do it with cockroaches now. You know that.
Yeah.
They can actually tap into a cockroach and kick a leg on the left side or kick a leg on the right side. And of course, you know, Voltaire was doing that about 200 years ago with frog legs.
Well, I guess look how far we've come. We're down to cockroaches.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder how much that costs the taxpayers.
Good point.
Well, you know what? The Cold War era is still going on because it's causing yet cancer in women and newborns from the uranium mining.
Chernobyl?
No, in this country. I mean, we're talking about...
Oh, in this country.
Yeah, the Navajo women and newborns are still coming down with cancer because of the mining of uranium. The dust is still floating around all over their reservation.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, that was done in several places other than, where do you say, New Mexico and Arizona?
Yeah. Isn't that horrible?
It is horrible.
No, it is. It's, I think they shut down a lot of these, but I know they can influence people. They can affect people, you know, because they get into the streams. Dust gets up in the air, dust gets in the streams, and makes its way through the life cycle.
Well, how about the water, you know, in the wells and all that stuff getting contaminated?
Oh, yeah,
all
definitely.
That. Yeah, well, you know,
they take the water and water the plants and everything, so you're actually eating it too.
Yeah, well, see, we don't think about those things when we do that. I still remember when I was in grade school, they would come, they did it a couple years in a row. They would give each student a toothbrush and a couple tubes of toothpaste. And then they would have you come back, you know, they would come back a couple months later, and then they would give you another exam. They weren't looking to see if you got cavities. They were looking about, you know, your overall health, your gums, and all that. Turned out that the government was actually doing that with irradiated toothpaste to see what type of effects it would have on young people.
I remember when they were doing sugar cubes at one time, little cups they gave us back in the early 60s. I don't know, do you remember anything like that?
I vaguely do, yeah. They did a couple weird things.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was vaccines or what they were trying to do, but they were, here, take this. You know, wasn't sure what it was for, though.
Yeah, well, hey, if you glow in the dark. And it's strange, too, because during that same time frame, they were actually dropping irradiated stuff in the atmosphere above cities to see. And at the same time, they were taking prisoners and experimenting with them without their knowledge by, you know, a lot of things they did crazy back in the late 50s and early 60s.
Oh, and you take all the atomic bombs they blew out in the desert and everything, and they had people nearby. They just figured they had the goggles would protect their eyes. That was the only thing they were concerned with. So, but you're finding out all these years later, where are those people? A lot of them have died of cancer already. Especially a lot of movie stars have passed away for the very same reason that they've actually were filming out in those same desert areas.
Oh, yeah.
For all those old Western movies and stuff.
Oh, yeah. They came down with all types of cancer, brain cancer, colon cancer, you name it. And that's what is really crazy. Not just that. The Navy did the same thing, right? When they would blow up ships and see what would happen with a nuclear device blowing up a ship, they would have all these other ships close by with all the sailors watching them with their goggles.
And sometimes you wonder if they really knew the effects at the time. I guess I'm going to have to think that they didn't know the severity of the problem.
No, and then how about the sailors that would serve on those ships? Those ships had to get irradiated also, and then they had to serve on them for who knows how long afterwards.
Yep. Oh, don't even get me started a little bit further into the Vietnam War about Agent Orange.
I'm paying for it yet. I still have a rash from it.
You know about that. You know about that time period.
Oh, I was over there. Yeah. I know. I got a rash. I can't get rid of. It's a fungus from it, and I tell you, it's nasty. Anyway, also grizzly bears in Alaska are starting to starve to death because one of the climate changes, and the population of salmon are dropping drastically, and the bears are literally starving to death.
I wonder if that's related to the same thing going on in the Pacific about the radiation.
I have no idea, but
for killing off the fish too before they get to Alaska. I mean, we're really sensitive to down here in Washington State because we have returned. The salmon returns to their origin. They go back up the stream to wherever they were birthed, and that includes up here where I'm at in the mountains. So we're not seeing quite as much salmon coming up this way either.
Yeah, I just wonder how much irradiated water is actually getting from Japan into the water. I'm sure it's some of it runoff. It has to be. And that is so scary. And we're going to pay for it very shortly because, like I said, when they dump this water, and we're talking billions of gallons of it, that is so scary.
I know, and I mentioned before I had a Geiger counter that I purchased some years ago, and I'm thinking I need to go back out by the river and do some sample testing to see where we're at right now.
Well, I want you to get a gallon of milk and check that, too, for me.
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, that was the other suggestion someone gave me, was to just simply go to the grocery store and use it and put it near the salmon and the tuna. Just to see if it's clicking more, or some of the other stuff like you say, the milk from the cows, because they're also eating anything that might be radiated.
Oh yeah,
you don't know.
Yeah, because you know how it works, a cycle, right? Off the ocean, that's where our moisture comes to create the rain. So It's picking up all this radiated stuff. Then it's dumping it out right in the fields where cattle is at, where they grow your food at. Hey, don't worry about it. Heck, it'll take a long time to kill you before you get cancer.
And some people think that it's just the water. I'll just stay away from the ocean. If it's if the Pacific Ocean is dying, well, that is significant in itself. But people don't realize there's a life cycle. All that comes spills over into the groundwater. It goes into the fields, goes up in the atmosphere. There's a saturation point that takes place over several years, and before you know it, it's in everything, including your own bodies.
Oh yeah. Well, even in China, they have found, because they use very toxic paint. Have you ever noticed when you go buy, like a bicycle, for example, it's made in China, the paint doesn't scratch easy. Or you go buy anything that has paint on it in China, it's more durable. Because the laws in our country, the paint is certain chemicals they can't mix in the paint. They don't care. So they can produce paint that's more durable, it lasts longer, but it's so toxic in these, it gets into the atmosphere too. I read a big article about that recently.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, a Florida man was arrested for attempting to barbecue a child molester.
That's one way to get back at people, but not a good way, though.
Oh, I don't know. Then I feel bad. A pit bull puppy dies after protecting a bunch of Florida kids from a venomous snake.
That's a good human interest story there.
That is.
It is.
The dog gave up its life knowing that probably, was going to whatever happen.
And that's a good thing because pit bulls get a bad rap, in the news anyway. So there's certain loyalties that show that the dog's not all that bad after all.
No, and it all types of dogs. It doesn't have to be a pit bull. It can be a German Shepherd or whatever. Sometimes the dog is just that way. Just like you can have a bunch of kids, right? You could have 8, 9 kids, and 7 of them turn out great. 1 of them goes to prison for murder. I mean, it's the same way with, with animals too. I mean, breeds. Some breeds are more aggressive than others, but I think a lot has to do with how they were brought up.
I think so. I know that certain breeds have some propensity to certain behaviors, but that shouldn't be the general rule for all of them. And I've known several people that had pit bulls for pets, and I had no problem with them. They might be a little bit overly friendly and stuff like that, but I can't really say that I felt endangered by the ones that I came across.
Oh, yeah. And hey, a new study, guys, found that the Incas used to sacrifice children. They would take them on top of volcanoes and leave them there, waiting for them to be struck by lightning. This is according to a new study.
Yeah, they used to take them to these sacred mountains, and they would give them some kind of local herbs or whatever, make them a little bit high, and some hooch, actually, and leave them there on top of these mountains where it'd be cold. It was, I don't know, it's kind of cruel if you ask me, but I don't know what their thinking was, but that was what they did.
Oh, yeah. Hey, a Russian naval vessel was sunk. And it was sunk by, you ready for this? Aggressive walrus.
Aggressive what?
Walrus.
Walruses.
Yes. Oh, boy.
They were able to sink a sub?
No, not a sub. A naval. All it says naval vessel. Who knows how big the naval vessel was?
Oh, I see. Okay.
This is in the Antarctica.
They're pretty big.
Yeah. Okay. Imagine who knows what condition some of those Russian ships are in, too. A friend of mine who was in the Navy, I remember this story years ago. His job was, he was a chief bosun mate. They would go down, and check the hull of the ship from the inside with a hammer. Okay, just checking to make sure it's still sound and stuff like that. He said that one of these spy vessels that the Navy had, that one of his guys was sitting there with a 5-pound hammer, hitting, below the waterline, just hitting the bulkhead, and all of a sudden, guess what?
Rust.
Yeah, it went right through. Water started coming. Yes, yep. And he said it wasn't so bad, but they were about ready to enter a typhoon.
Oh, it would have crumpled up like if the metal was that thin. Just imagine what it was like on the rest of the hull.
Yeah, he said that they cut the life of the ship. I guess they brought it back into Bremerton, and that's where it stayed till they, did whatever they did to dismantle it. But, I remember there was a Washington State ferry years ago. I don't know if you remember that story, that it was up in dry dock, and they were going around checking the hull, and they stuck a hammer right through the hull.
Yep. They had several. They were trying to save one. I don't know if it's the same one that you're referring to. They tried to restore it, but they couldn't get the funding up for it or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you don't take care of these things, it's just like anything else. You can't allow, if you don't take care of the bottom of the boat and it's in this water all the time and it's not cleaned ever, then you're going to have issues later on.
Yeah, but could you imagine hauling, like 100 cars or so at a time across the bay and all that stuff, and then they're doing it on something, maybe the hull and areas as thick as a piece of paper. Scary.
It is, and we know that there's been some ferry disasters, too, where I think some people lost their lives as well. And cars went under.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, guys, we're going to get ready to take our break. We'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark. And at the top of the hour, we got our guest on, Tom Taylor. We're going to be talking about dinosaurs, past, present, and could there actually be dinosaurs somewhere roaming the earth? We'll be back after all this.